Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Season 4, Episode 5.
Welcome back, friends. For this episode, we got all fancy and went designer. Our guest today grew up in my hometown of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, but now resides in the Minneapolis area. Welcome, graphic designer Blake Spiegel.
What up, Chris?
Dude, it's good to have you here. Thank you for coming in. Thanks for driving all the way to Eau Claire.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that I came just for you, but my family lives here and stuff, so.
Yeah, we planned this. So I know you real well, but give us a quick summary of who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. So like you said, I'm a graphic designer. I grew up in Eau Claire. I went to UW-Stout for graphic design for like 6 years. And then when I graduated, I moved to the cities where I just started looking for jobs to start my career, right? And I worked in a job that was pretty cool, but then I eventually left that job for Sussner Design, which is where I work now, which is a brand identity firm. Job's awesome. We refresh brand identities for big scale clients. And then after that, I come home and I do freelance design for small businesses and stuff.
Who are some of the people you did stuff with? Like for Sussner Design, like what's one of the ones that you worked on, like a more prominent brand or whatever?
Sure, yeah. Something that people would be more familiar with just because a lot of the projects we work on are in Minneapolis. But Lifetime Fitness is one of our big clients.
Cool.
Yeah,
And then
with them right now.
And then recently here in Eau Claire, you worked with a bunch of people that were on the show, actually.
Yeah.
But who are some of the people that you worked with recently around here?
Sure, yeah. Sarah Morse, I did Eau Claire Pet Care. That project was dope. Sarah's awesome. So was Ty Morse, Tattoos at Kind Hand Tattoo, shout out. And then Mandy Hartman did the logo for Lunatic Fringe, which once again was super awesome. I love that project. And then I worked with Chapin, Scotty Benz on People Suck project. And yeah, I mean, that one also was just super fun. He's the shit.
Yeah. And we're obviously going to do something too. So we keep our eyes open for that.
Yeah, watch out.
So what's the best way for our friends to kind of follow your work, see the things that you do create, contact you if they want you to make some kind of dope little thing for them?
Yeah, sure. I like to make dope little things, and I do a lot of that on Instagram. It's at Blake Spiegel. It's Blake, Spiegel. And then if you wanted to contact me, feel free to slide into the DMs. Or you can do it professionally and go to my website, spiegeldesign.co/contact.
Dude, that's rad. I like sliding people's DMs all the time. That's for real.
You gotta do it professionally, because
dude, I know.
In all seriousness, I'm running a business.
Yeah, no, I just like send people DMs and say, yo, you trying to be on this show?
That works too.
You're like, what do you think? And then people a lot of times are down. It's sick,
I mean,
man.
if you do slide into my DMs and you get a formal response, don't be super surprised because
you're on your end. You have to be professional for sure.
Yeah, I have to. Otherwise, you charge $50 for a logo, and that's not.
Yeah, probably not going to be ideal. Okay, so I know you from like a lot of things, right? I mean, I know you from when you were real young because I would see you at the skate park all the time. Mm-hmm. You were like the little kid that's whatever. I was 19. You were however old, younger,
14 or something.
Yeah. And you were already doing better kickflips than me, which is sick. But I also know your stepdad, which was kind of random. I was getting tattooed by Keith Kors. Shout out. He's done like pretty much all my tattoos. He's been a good friend of mine for a really long time. But I was getting tattooed by him one time and I saw you and I'm like, why is Blake here? And then I was talking to Keith about it. He's like, oh, yeah, that's my stepson. I'm like, what? Sick. So I know both of you, but I met you separately. So I don't know, good friends with both of you. Growing up, though, with him around, is that kind of where some of that art stuff came from? Like inspiration? Like, why did you want to do artwork stuff?
Yeah, totally. Keith is not only an awesome artist, but, an even more awesome dad to me. He basically raised me and took me out of this vanilla lifestyle where I didn't know anything about music or culture or much of anything. I was just this little nerdy kid. And he showed me art, which is what I turned my career into. He showed me skateboarding. He showed me snowboarding. Like I said, music. He's been a total inspiration for just about everything in my life.
So who are some of the who influenced your artwork itself outside of Keith? Because obviously, like the tattoo industry, right? Like you end up being friends with a bunch of tattoo artists and stuff. But what are some of the artists that you're kind of influenced by?
Sure. I mean, this gets more into like the professional career, but there's this guy named Tobias Saul. He runs Heritage Type Foundry, and he is an amazing letterform artist. And he's a huge inspiration. But that's just like typography. There's a bunch of dudes that inspire me for logo designs and illustrations and whatnot. Shout out to Jared Tuttle. He's formerly now one of my good friends that I work with and collab with fairly often. We just did Spirits of Stillwater, and that was a really fun kind of mural project. And then Adam Anderson, he's an amazing logo designer. And I kind of connected with him looking for like some sort of mentor, and he took the time. I mean, he's older, he's got kids, and his art style is just awesome. It's like really minimal, but like minimal illustrative, right? And his background it's similar to mine. It's in fine arts. And so he kind of grew up drawing and whatnot too. And I reached out to him one day, and he got back to me on Instagram. You know, I slid right into his DMs, and he was like, yeah, dude, I appreciate what you're saying. Cause he was on a podcast, right? And I was like, yeah, dude, your art is so good. Like, I just listened to your podcast segment, and it really inspired me. Like, we have a lot of things in common. I started with the fine arts background, and then I transitioned into actual design, where things get more simplified, right? They're not as illustrative with like crazy mediums like charcoal. You know, you're kind of working with pixels and vector. And then we just chatted, and he mentored me for a little bit. And he's a super huge inspiration. So he's the best. Adam Anderson, AA Creative on Instagram.
Oh yeah, dude. I think we follow each other. But anyways, I like can't explain how important and how useful social media is these days. Yeah. Like to people when I talk about the show, they're like, how do you get guests and stuff? And I'm like, dude, if somebody has less than like 100K followers on Instagram, they probably see your DM. Whether or not they choose to respond to you is a totally different story, but they probably see it. The fact that you can just like get in front of you can get a hold of pretty much anybody now, or at least like they'll see that you tried to is like pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So just like as far as like picturing you, right? Like I met you again when you were 14. You were like already doing like art stuff at that point, which I guess makes sense with like Keith being in the house and stuff. Clearly like art's just around you. Yeah. But like taking it back, when did you kind of start doing art? Like what kind of artwork did you do? And I really want to know this one, so I'll just ask it right now. What's the first thing that you made that you were actually kind of stoked on at the time? Yeah.
I mean, I've been drawing like my whole life, as far as I know, just in middle school, doodling in classes instead of paying attention, to high school I took literally all of the art classes that they had to offer. In freshman year of high school, I ended up doing, it was like a drawing class or something, ended up doing this like self-portrait of me holding this Dirty Ghetto Kids DGK skateboard, holding it behind my head and like hanging my arms over it and like looking all cool, right? It was like this crazy, stupid charcoal drawing that I was like super stoked on at the time. It's crazy you asked that, because my mom pulled all these drawings out from the basement and she put them in her office, and I like walked in the house and unpacked all my stuff and like gave her a hug and kiss, you know, because I love your mom. And then I like go to the office and I look, and there's like my old drawing and a stack of old junk. And I'm like, Mom, throw this stuff away. Like, this is garbage. And then, yeah, I just totally realized that, it's kind of a good thing to look back at, right?
Yeah, I think when you look at stuff like that, it jogs your memory in a different way. Yeah. Like if you're just told by somebody like, think about what you felt like when you were 14. Like, it's kind of hard to think about that. But if you put something really specific like that, like imagery, or sometimes like music can do that for people. But if you put that directly in front of them, then all of a sudden, like it jogs this memory, and you kind of like remember when you did that. And it's I don't know, it's cool. That's why I like to keep a lot of old stuff of my own too.
Yeah, back to your roots. Do you want to see this thing?
Yes.
Check it out.
So you got like this sweet Justin Bieber hair and everything.
Oh, yeah, I had it before Justin Bieber did, though, so don't forget that.
Sure. And you're way taller than him.
Yeah. Not to mention tattoos are way better. It's got some garbage tattoos for a famous person.
That's true.
If anyone wants to see it, check out my Instagram story if you're watching this. I'll make sure to release that as soon as this podcast.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So talking Instagram really quick, I don't start and talk about this enough on the show, but I really should. Good content, you need to pay for, man. Like, I'm not saying anyone needs to pay me, but in general, like, if you want to have good quality stuff out there, you pay with your dollar. In this type of a thing, when we're talking about audio, you pay with your time. It's really important to actually shout out and say something if you appreciate something. So we're doing this. It's on the radio. It's also on Apple and everywhere else. But the medium that I use is Instagram. So you can follow us at passion_pod. You can find all the different things on the website of passionboardshop.com. The best way to support this show, there's several different ways. One, you can go and write a review about the show on Apple or anywhere else. You can write to the radio station, Converge Radio, and say, look, Chris's show's sick. You should keep this thing going, which would be tight. You can go to my shop and you can go and find all this like merchandise that says Passion. It's important to recognize if you really appreciate something, even if you got no dollars at all, send me a DM and tell me that you appreciate it, and you're going to make my day. Hit me up on Instagram.
Share the love, baby.
Yes, please. So where are you, like, you did all this drawing, right? I guess I always kind of thought maybe you're going to be a tattooer or something when you're growing up, because you're like super into all that stuff. When did you switch the whole idea of like drawing into graphic design? Because it's obviously not the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I love drawing, and I think that was just like the opener to graphic design. I was always a whiz on computers. Like, I played a lot of computer games growing up. And then I kind of learned Photoshop in middle school. And then in high school in like print class, if anyone's from Memorial, shout out to Mrs. Crowdy. She's the best. She basically let us do whatever. We'd print T-shirts and like do whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, Photoshop. I'm a graphic designer for sure. Like, that's it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm finishing high school and I hate like taking tests and doing all this stuff. So I like to draw and I'm awesome at Photoshop. Like, let's go to school for graphic design at Stout. And when I went to Stout, I didn't really understand what graphic design was. Like, the first 2 years that you go to school, you're really just taking gen eds and redoing the stuff that you did in high school. Like, I took drawing classes that were the same thing that was in high school. It was super redundant, but it was like cool. I don't know. I met a lot of people and it was really fun, but it wasn't until the third year you really start to get into like the major of graphic design. And one of the classes that I took was letter form design. And in that class, you have to like memorize typefaces and like draw letter forms and like all this nerdy crap. And I loved it. It was like my calling. So I mean, there's like Helvetica, right? The standard. There's Palatino. There's Trajan, which is on like every movie poster ever that's like old school and classical, right? And these are all things that you have to like learn and memorize. There's like 52 typefaces. And rather than like taking tests and like studying for stuff, I was like, I'm going to memorize typefaces, right? I was obsessed, to say the least. And not only was it just like memorizing typefaces and like caring about typography, but like you had to draw these letter forms. Like, I had to draw the letter L, or even the worst letter S, like a foot by a foot, right? Massive. And something that most people wouldn't know is like letter forms are like very meticulous. Like, there's a lot of math that goes into creating a letter form that you wouldn't really think. Like, you have to measure increments in a typeface to make sure that the widths are the same. That's really important when it comes to like a serif typeface, is like to make sure that the widths are consistent, right? And that, I just loved it. I mean, I was infatuated by typography, and that's why like in my Instagram bio I have type enthusiast, is because I love typography, and that was kind of my intro to graphic design.
Yeah, I've seen people do must be like kind of just a general practice, but there's like a month or something that everyone does, like day one and they do an A, and then day two and they do a B. Like, what's up with that thing on Instagram? You must know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
What is that?
That's like practice more than anything. It's like 30 days of type. I don't get into it because it's not engaging content.
Sure.
And I don't want to post anything that's not super engaging. It gets old really quick, especially with 26 posts.
Oh, sure. But it's fun for me to watch people do it, because I'm like,
right.
I wonder how much time you spent on that individual S.
Unnecessary amounts of time.
For sure.
To say the least.
I got a question for you, though, just because like I remember you as this little kid. So when I see you, the fact that you're like drinking a beer in front of me, I'm like, you old enough, man? Like, oh, it's weird. It's strange. So the idea that like you're an established adult doing your career thing is like super awesome. And obviously I'm really impressed by it, which is part of the reason I like asked you to be on the show. But like, where are you at currently exactly in your career? What are you doing? Where are you headed? You're obviously out of school and you're making logos. Like, where are you at?
So since I started working at Susner Design, I've kind of just been learning as much as I can, because there is a ton to learn yet even. I mean, I'm taking in as much as I can from the owners, Derek and Tessa. Susner Design is like, it's 5 people. So it's 2 owners, 2 designers, and an account manager, right? So I'm hand in hand with Derek, who's been in the industry for over 20 years. The dude is a powerhouse of knowledge, super inspiring, amazing creative director. And he's been, whether he likes it or not, he's been teaching me. And I've been learning, and I do have a lot to learn. But, at the end of the day, I work 40 hours a week for them, and I want to work with them for a long time. But then I come home and work on my side hustle and work for small businesses. So I'm still growing that as much as I can, like I do have a long way to go. I'm super early on in this game.
Yeah, but I think you're obviously like turning a few heads because a lot of my friends are hitting you up. They're like, dude, I'm stoked on what this guy's doing. And honestly, like, not just you, Zach, like our mutual friend, Zach Pater, that you grew up with, right?
Yeah.
He was another little kid. Well, not little, but whatever, was your age, and I'd see him at the skate park. Dude, his stuff's so sick too. I'm like, I get to be this cool, like, older brother figure of like, I own the shop, and I've just been around, I've been the little bit older dude around all these skaters and stuff. And it's so wild to see all of you guys now, like mid-20s out there killing it, doing all your, doing your thing.
Yeah. I mean, shout outs to you too. Like, mad respect for you running the podcast and not only taking it in your hands and running a skateboard shop in a small town, which is insane. So if anyone doesn't respect Chris for that, I don't know what you're doing.
Well, you said it, not me, I suppose.
I did.
So switching topic, just because like I want to know something interesting about you. I feel like I already know everything about you, but I'm sure I don't.
No.
What is something about you that most people don't know that might surprise them?
I've been on computers like for a super long time, and one of the programs that was on my mom's Windows computer was Microsoft Paint, and I'm sure we've all used it, but I don't think anyone's used it the way I have.
Okay.
Since I was like 10 years old, I'd like draw my game characters on there and like create illustrations and like get all nerdy on it and just like have fun and create art on Microsoft Paint. And this is when I was like 10 years old. I don't think anyone knows that besides me.
That's tight. Way before the time of just like using a pen on an iPad and like drawing, using the like the little cursor.
Yeah, I made videos and stuff. Like I was a little whiz on it. Like it was there. No one will ever find these videos, but they exist.
That's tight. Okay, so obviously things have changed since then, right? Yeah. You're not drawing those anymore. Mm-hmm. How would you describe like your artwork, your design work? How would you describe what yours is like in comparison to other people?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because when it comes to logo design, like you really don't want to have a specific style. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have a brand, right? And you reach out to me and you're like, yo, I need you to do a logo for this like car company that I'm running or something random, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Like you don't want my signature. Like my style is kind of like my signature, right? You don't want my signature all over your cars because I wouldn't want yours all over mine, right? So it's interesting. It's an interesting question to ask because I don't think that a logo designer, because that's kind of what I would define myself as, more or less, should have a style. But sometimes I do fall back into the stuff that I like to do, if that makes any sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think there's like some kind of, I don't know, there's a little bit of both, right? Because if people are reaching out to you, it's because they like what they're seeing.
Yeah.
So I totally get where you're coming from. I think that like you don't want to have it be so obnoxiously obvious that Blake created this, because the point isn't about Blake, right? The point is about the business owner. But at the same time, like some of that's going to be tied in.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a little bit of that, but I see exactly what you're talking about. Because ideally, if you're doing it really well, the logo is going to represent that person or that business in the best possible way. Which why would that look like Blake?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
like my clients have to live with this for a long time. That's why they invest their time and their energy with me, right? Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't feel right if this was something that I was like, oh yeah, this is my niche style. Unless you're trying to niche down. There's a lot of designers that do that, and they have a really big following. And that could be part of the reason that I don't know.
Well, I mean, again, everything in life, and I always try to explain this to people if they, for some reason, can't get it. Everything in life is a spectrum. Like everything is a spectrum, in which case, like it doesn't mean that you have to be a niche person. Doesn't mean that you have to do every single thing in a totally different styling. You're going to be somewhere on that. You know what I mean? Hopefully more towards the way where you're just making everyone happy with their own cool shit. But there's going to be people on the other end of that too. So let's just paint the picture of like what the process looks like, because clearly I don't really know. I thought logo design was just Photoshop. I don't know. You just like rip shit off from other people, right? But no. What? So let's paint the picture of the process for how you create a logo and branding somebody. So let's pretend I just started the show, which I started last year. So I guess it's kind of new. But if I just started the show and I'm like, Blake, I need your help. I'm not good at this stuff. I paint stupid monsters. I don't know how to make logos. How would you go about making my show look awesome?
Yeah, I mean, let's assume that you saw my stuff and you engaged me, and you knew nothing about me really other than the fact that you liked the way that my stuff looked, right?
Deal.
I would probably just like open up the conversation with like, okay, like what are you looking for, you know? And just kind of like leave it in your hands to kind of paint the picture of what you want. At the end of the day, like no matter what the project is, I'm still going to bring you through the design process that I have, which is basically just 4 simple parts. It's define, create, refine, and then implement. And what I mean by that is like define. So that whole phase is a lot of research. It's me getting to know you. We'll have a kickoff meeting, right? Like if I didn't know you, I would definitely want to sit down and get to know you, right? Because there's that weird bond if it's not an impersonal relationship. Like it's like if you go to a restaurant and have a waiter compared to going through the drive-through, right? So an impersonal relationship is going to be me and you. We're going to have time together where we can connect so I can understand you and so I can be honest with you, right? And then at that point, like I ask you a fair amount of questions. I give you a questionnaire that you fill out. And these are pretty strategic so that I can get the answers that I need so that down the line we don't run into any issues with not being on the same page, whether it's aesthetically or for messaging or colors, right? So you want to define all of the requirements up front so you can avoid problems down the line, right? So that whole define phase is super, super important. And for some people, if they don't really value that and they're not willing to engage and ask those questions, I mean, to be honest, I don't really want to work with them, right? It kind of says a lot about either that person or that company or that investment, right? Because time is valuable. And if you want to invest time into your company, you're probably going to have some sort of value in that. And then it goes into create, which is basically where I disappear for a couple weeks or even a month. And then I just go through my design process. And I won't get too deep into that. But for, let's say, a logo design project, I'll design like 10 to 15 different logos, right? And then I limit that down into like 2 or 3 that I usually show you, right? So there's a lot of stuff that goes down behind the scenes. And then it's refined. So I show you, I walk you through why I made the decisions that I do. And a lot of that is backed up by the fact that you do create a bunch of logos prior, and then you reduce it down to the best ones, right? And then there'll be a big conversation, and hopefully we can refine and come to a solution, make some changes, and then implement it. So that's stepping it out into what you would see as your brand or your podcast, and like you would make it dope. So that could be as much as social media profile pictures, business cards, websites, letterheads. I mean, you name it. That's stepping it out. That's implementing.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's like really, really awesome, if this is like a whole sales strategy in my mind, it's not even so much like actual sales, but I like to tell people you kind of graduate in sales up, because that's what I did for a long time. Mm-hmm. And you graduate from selling a product to selling yourself as the solution. Okay. And that means that you actually have to be able to back it up. But ideally, you don't have to sell any product ever. Ideally, people like you and trust you enough that when they have a problem, they're going to call you. Hopefully you get paid to fix that problem, but they're going to call you and say, Blake, like, dude, I saw you did this logo for somebody else. I need help. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, help me out. Or in general, you know, if you did that logo with this person, you now have this relationship through this whole time frame that now you're going to be the person they look to when they're like, I need a different strategy for this. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? They trust you because you probably know a lot more about that than they do. And hopefully, you know, realistically, this is going to be a business transaction, right? So if somebody's going to invest money in you, which should be at least, you know, we're not going to get into numbers of what anyone costs, but it should be enough money that realistically they should want to give you a little bit of their time anyways, because that's the best way this product's going to come out. It's the same way with the show. Sometimes I got to just roll up, run through this interview and it's done. And like, there's not really a whole lot of time because this person doesn't have time or whatever. But ideally, I'm trying to send people all the questions in advance so they're aware of it. I'm trying to be able to sit down and like talk to them for a little while. And I'm like, look, this is my time that's valuable. This is your time that's valuable. Let's make sure that we get the most out of this in one go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, even with the logos, that's kind of like taking photos, right? Like you take 1,000 photos at a wedding and you only actually use a dozen of them.
To make it that simple, yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So, but you've been making a ton of stuff lately. So what, I'm just out of like my own curiosity, because I really like the Eau Claire pet care stuff. And I actually like the ones that like she didn't use.
Yeah, me too.
Those are like my favorite ones with like the rabbit and stuff.
Right.
So if you could do, just because I always like think, like people ask me, oh, who do you want to interview? Dude, I have so many people I want to interview.
Who do you want to get on?
One of them, I really want to get Slug from Atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, dude, he's like king with everything they're doing with Soundset and everything all these years, like with Rhyme Sayers. I really want to get Slug on the show. I know it's probably not time yet, but Slug, if one day you're going to hear this, because I actually had Casanova on the show this season, and he did a song with Atmosphere. He was featured on one of their songs. So I'm there.
Manifested, dude.
Yeah, let's make this happen. But for you, who is a business, or like I guess a person, whatever, but who's a business that if you could do a rebranding for, not because their brand is bad, but just out of sake of really wanting to, if somebody could hit you up, who do you want to do a rebranding for?
That's a good question. I feel like I want to relate it to something to do with podcasts right now, just because we're on one. I looked back and I've been following Joe Rogan for like the longest time, right? And his logo's sick, right? It's like his face with this 3-eyed Joe Rogan dude, like all spiritual and stuff. And I think that's sweet, right? But for whatever reason, I'm just like not really drawn to it because it's more of like a painting than anything. And it turns out that like 8 years ago, this guy that goes by Mike Maxwell Art, he ended up doing a commission for Joe Rogan for this like stand up in Atlanta, Georgia or something. And then it was just like a poster. And then a couple years later, Joe Rogan hit him up and he was like, yo, can you make me a logo? And Mike Maxwell Art, he's like a fine artist and he's not like a designer, right? And so he does these like crazy illustrations and it looks like he's on mushrooms when he's doing them and stuff. Like, I'm serious, you can look him up. He's a talented guy. No disrespect if for whatever reason he's listening to this. But like, Joe Rogan is now one of the largest, if not the most rich podcaster out there. Like everyone knows who Joe Rogan is.
For sure.
He's had some of the most notable people on his show and it's just so chill. And I mean, he gets a lot of good information, but the dude is just super smart himself. It's really impressive. But I feel like his logo just like isn't really in alignment with his future goals, right? And I think that's really important is because a while ago, like 5 years ago, whenever he had that logo, like it satisfied his short-term needs, but now he's excelled to, like I said, just the largest podcast out there. So I feel like he should have a logo that should be designed for his long-term goals. And, you know, if for whatever reason Joe Rogan is listening to this, I have an idea.
Sick.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree. I think that it's important to understand that things evolve, things change, and where you were at a few years ago isn't where you're at today. Yeah. And that's like nothing to be ashamed of, that what you did a few years ago no longer satisfies what your current goals are. That's not like a bad thing. It was something cool you did before. But if you just keep focusing on what something used to be, like the good old days, then dude, you're going to get stuck. Like you gotta be aware that even huge companies do rebrandings periodically. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it's important to continue to like realize, hey, I'm growing. I might need some new stuff every once in a while. Yeah. It's the same way, like all of a sudden you make more money, you want to buy a nicer car, right? Like it's time to like update yourself.
Yeah, exactly. On that too, like it's okay to change your brand, but like you can still hold on to the heritage, right? You don't have to completely ditch everything that you own. You can still bring little pieces into a new brand or even just like a little refinement. Like that's still okay. But if your brand is like outdated, then I don't know, you got to look into that.
Yeah, I think it's just like an area of opportunity, right? Rather than looking at like negatives, it's just like, look, this is something that you can fix with your business that could potentially do really cool things for you. So, and in general, like I talk about business stuff all the time with people, and I'm like, look, no one does 100% of what they want to do in a business because you don't have the time to. Like, it's not possible. Your business is never gonna be perfect. There's always going to be all these things that like, hey, I want to get to this. But rebranding is something that, I mean, dude, even when the shop hit 5, I didn't rebrand like my logo so much, but I redid my entire store because I was like, dude, this is time for an update.
Yeah, I mean, you deserve it too.
Well, yeah, I feel comfortable in it now.
Hell yeah.
So artist block hits everybody. I want to ask about that one because like for me, people have been hitting me up all the time and I love this because I love painting. I've been so busy. I haven't been painting as much. I've been doing a lot of like digital stuff.
Yeah.
But people really like the stupid little monsters I make, which is so sick to me because like I started painting these things when I was going through a really unfortunate time in my life and I was really depressed and I was painting these dumb little creatures because they like made me smile. I was like, this is simple, it's fun, I like doing them. People actually ask me all the time to like paint them these things and not just for like their houses, but like a lot of like people from the like guests who have been on the show and stuff are like, dude, can you make like a monster that has like a likeness of me? We should do something like that. And I'm like, dude, we should do something like that. But like, I'm not that good at art that I can just do that. Like if somebody asked me to. So, I mean, I've been trying to.
That's
Anyways.
funny. That's super funny.
So artist block hits me when I'm painting my stupid little things. It's not my job though to do that. So it's not really a big deal if I have artist block. What do you do when you have it? Because like you can't really have that happen for any extended period of time.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, that's just, it happens all the time. But I'm conscious of it too. But like I always have so much stuff going on that the best way to get around something, if I have an issue with, let's say, not getting a solution or I just don't have any ideas, is I just jump to another project. And it works. Or you go outside, you go to the gym. I don't want to always just resort to going to have a beer, but like sometimes that helps. Or just like take a 15-minute break. Stepping away from the problem, then coming back can give you kind of an open mind to the solution. Because at the end of the day, that's a lot of what I'm doing is coming up with good solutions. Once I have a good idea, it's just drawing. And you can't really have artist block for that. Well, I guess you can, but like you just have to have the right path, right? So, I mean, just distract your brain, work on something else, come back. And if you can't figure out a good way to draw a little monster dude, then like go pet your cat or something.
Dude, yeah. Going back to season 1, episode 4, which was featuring this artist that I really like in town. His name's Gabriel Fisher. I was talking to him about that. Yeah,
I worked with him at Zoomies.
Yeah, sick. Well, I was asking him about his paintings, and I didn't realize he's like, yeah, dude. Sometimes I got like 4, 5, 6 paintings I'm working on at once. Whatever. Like they're just all in the progress, and I'm like, that's actually tight. That's a good idea. If you're like stuck on something, go work on something else because you're probably not stuck on that one.
Yep.
But you get stuck in general in like careers. There's like things that come up all the time that it's like really hard. I heard some analogy the other day that I really enjoyed, and it was talking about how you want to keep a momentum going. So when you hit a wall, how do you keep momentum going? And you can't go forward, right? But you need to keep moving. So sometimes, and this was the analogy, and I'm messing it up. I don't even know where I heard it. But
pivot.
That's right. That's right. Is to be able to just go. Sometimes moving horizontally is still moving forward, right? So for you, when you have obstacles come up, right, within your career, what are some of the tough ones that you've faced? And like, I mean, I guess I assume one of the biggest ones is trying to get recognition because like you're young and there's a million people that are trying to do graphic design and not everyone's doing it amazingly. But what are some of the like bigger obstacles that you've faced so far?
Yeah, I mean, obviously validation is something that most people want, right? But when I started designing, like when I transitioned out of Photoshop and I was like, I love this, this is what I want to do. I didn't do it for validation, and I still don't. Right? I do it because I'm motivated and I literally just love doing it. And the obstacle is not getting recognition. I mean, that can be painful and it can hurt your ego and whatever, but like the first 2 years that I was designing, I didn't really get a whole lot of recognition. And I actually deleted like all of my old stuff. Yeah, because I don't like it and I didn't think it was very good. And it didn't get very much recognition, but that wasn't motivating, right? But I still did it because I loved doing it. So you have to look at like, what does motivate you at the end of the day, and like you're painting like creatures and stuff, and like that's awesome. That motivates you. You do it because you like it, not because other people do. Because if you're doing it for other people, then you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons, right?
Well, then I'd be interviewing the wrong person because that's the whole point, right? With this show is showing that like, and it sucks that money has to be involved. Ultimately, it does. But the beautiful part about doing something that you're passionate about, hopefully, for a living if you can, is that you would probably do it for free anyways. I mean, realistically, like you're not gonna because this is your career. But if it wasn't your career, you would probably be doodling around with stuff anyways because you like doing it. And so that's kind of the beautiful part is you put all this time and energy into something that you just like doing in the first place. And it just gets like easier as you like do it more. You have more recognition, so more people reach out to you in the first place. You're more confident in how much you're going to charge for something because people expect to pay that type of thing. You're more used to your tools. You're just better at the craft. Everything keeps getting better and everything keeps getting easier. And you should theoretically have been enjoying the process the whole time, anyways.
Yeah, and you only get better with time. Like I've refined my process down to the point where it is easier for not only me, but it's easier for the client too. You run into less roadblocks, right? You have a better solution. And yeah, I mean, money does kind of have to be involved at the end of the day, but you make a good point. Like I was doing this stuff for free for a while. I've designed quite a few free logos, and I like to actually do pro bono projects every year. I work for this restaurant in downtown Minneapolis, and I just design all their stuff for free. But that's because like they gave me a job when I moved to the cities, and like they helped me financially. And when I was in Menominee, like one of the owners let me stay at their duplex and work there for a couple months, like while I was transitioning from college to the cities. Like I would design stuff for them all the time for free, right? And so that's not motivating. It's like helping people, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and like I said, what's really, really cool is if you do that long enough, all of a sudden you're doing things that you really enjoy and you're just getting paid for them anyways.
Yeah.
It's like the best possible case scenario, but you got to work for that shit. People who think it just happens, like people say it all the time to me, like, you're so lucky, you're just living the dream, you own a skateboard shop. I'm like, dude, it wasn't free.
It doesn't happen.
Like, come on. Like, if you want to get to that type of place, like you have to work pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, you don't just fall into success. Success is completely up to you. And if you're not successful, it is also completely up to you. You have to remember that.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about working for myself is if I mess up on something or if something doesn't work out, like it's my fault. Yeah. But on the flip side, right? Everything that you do that turns out, it's like because of you. I mean, yeah, some people might have helped, but it's because of you. Because of like what I do, I can kind of like use my schedule however I want it. I can put things here, there. I mean, sometimes I'm working around other people's schedules. Like right now, we're kind of recording a little bit late at night because I had to wait till my kids were, in bed. But because I can do that, I can kind of like spend my time however I please. So every day is kind of awesome because I can always fit in something I really want to do. And I just want to ask you, what is your like favorite part of your day? Because my favorite part of my day changes all the time. I can just like fit it in, and usually it's having coffee in my hot tub. So what's up? That's so awesome. If you haven't woken up and just like made coffee and sat in a hot tub, you're missing out on so much in life.
I'm missing out on so much apparently because that sounds super sick. I love coffee and I love hot tubs. So I don't know what you're doing tomorrow morning, but.
we could do that. So what's your favorite part of your day?
My favorite part of my day is, and this kind of happened on accident when I got my first design job. We would have meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like it was so consistent. And they were kind of cut and dry, and I wanted to like bring a little jazz to them. And this started randomly, but like I would write the word Monday in like calligraphy. And then I eventually just kept on doing that. And I worked that job for a year. So I ended up having a year's worth of like calligraphy that said like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like 52 different sheets of like all this different calligraphy. And so now if I'm just like writing something in my notebook, I'll make like one word super fancy. And, I'll do it on like cars and stuff on my Snapchat and on Instagram. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just bringing like design to life in some places that you don't really expect to see it.
That's awesome, dude. You need to like write me a sweet little note. Write me a thank you card. Write me a dumb little thank you note, like, or postcard from Minneapolis. Cause I like I go there all the time, but you could do that and then write thank you and all like fancy script and it'll go on my fridge.
I'm going to do it now.
I can't wait. So what can we expect to see from you in the near future? Cause obviously like you're evolving your career super quickly at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily know what's ahead, but I do have fairly lofty goals. I do want to grow my Instagram following, and like we said before, it's not for validation. It's not for affirmation from people. It's like, I want to work with bigger clients. I want to work on bigger projects. And that does come from following, because following is kind of this trust that people get without really knowing you, right? So if I have a big following, that probably means that I have a lot of consistent work that's getting me to this, follower count. And that's really what it is that I want to push myself to engage with the design community, which is amazing. And I want to grow in that way. And I've been actively trying to do that for a couple years now, and it's tough. It's really hard because a lot of these designers out there, like, they really niche down, and they're really, really good at one thing. And as we've said before, like, I don't want to put my signature all over people's brands, right? I don't want to show my style in something that doesn't really belong, right? So unless I niche down, I think it's going to be a hard road, but like, I want it. So I'm probably going to try to get it the best I can.
Yeah, dude. I mean, social media is its own crazy game. I would say, just from like my own personal experience, doing your work, especially if you want it to just represent these clients, that's great. But if people are following you, they want to see you at the same time. So I always try to tell people when they're doing like their social media strategies to pepper in a couple different things. One, pepper in an actual photo of yourself periodically, because people want to put a face to this work. So have a good photo of yourself periodically. But then also every however many posts, have something that's just your style specifically. So that way there's a consistency to that. Because then they can see like, this is who this person is, and I want to follow that, and I appreciate who that person is, but I can see all the diversity of their work too. It's all about like kind of putting together a whole strategy with it. But I totally agree, because like, I'm always working on my following for the show. And that's because realistically, like, if I hit somebody up, if I just like DM them and say, hey, can you come on the show? They're going to look at how many followers I have, how many people engage in my posts and stuff. It's kind of crazy, but it actually is important.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's a weird little game that you kind of have to play.
It's super wild that it's like that, though. It's like, unless you have a huge following, you're not necessarily credible, which is not true at all, because I know a lot of designers that like are so talented and don't have a following. It just doesn't make any sense. So there's a correlation, but there also isn't, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always like two sides. There's like the full industry one where you don't even have to have like an Instagram if you've like worked with enough clients, and and then it's all a different zone. Yeah. But social media is a cool tool that, like, if you choose to use it, it can be pretty helpful, because you don't need to have anybody else. You can just do it yourself, which is really awesome.
It's free, and it's an online portfolio, and it's an online presence of yourself. It's almost necessary nowadays, unless you don't care, like you said, right?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to get pretty much anywhere without having a social media following these days.
Yeah, that's true.
So I always like to ask if you could share a story, just because I love stories, man. And I feel like when you do stuff that you care about, you end up like in really unique situations, and like you have these cool stories to tell because it wasn't just like money related, right? And obviously, like you talked to me about Mandy's thing, which was so sick. But do you have a story that you can share with us about something specific that happened to you that you were like really stoked happened, but it really only happened because you chose to do what you do?
Yeah. I definitely have a story I can share, and it's not money related at all. You know, I did this project for free because it was someone that I care about. So I was dating my ex-girlfriend at the time, and I hadn't really met her dad, and he was like bedridden for a month or so, and we didn't really know what was up. And then we went to visit him one day, and I didn't really get to say hi, and I was like, I want to meet this guy. Like, she really cares about him. Like, it's her dad. Like, it's super important. And then one day we got a call, and he was in the hospital, and he was going through kidney failure, and he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is bone cancer. And I never like got to meet the guy at all. And, you know, he was going through all this chemo and having to deal with his own problems. And I like finally, you know, went over with her and like got to meet him and gave him a hug. I was like, I'm Blake, like, nice to meet you. And he was kind of loopy yet and whatever. And he, for whatever reason, he was like, I want to meet you. Like, it's a pleasure. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I just felt so bad, you know, not only for my girlfriend at the time, but also like him. Like, I never got the chance to like get to know you before any of this happened, because his life just like flipped upside down. And then we eventually got to know each other pretty well. And I talked to him about design, and he's like an Under Armour rep. He like retails Under Armour material, like prints on him and stuff. And, you know, at the time, he wasn't super optimistic about his outcome, and neither were the doctors and whatever. And he was like, I want to leave behind this legacy. And I was like, absolutely. Like, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, I've always wanted to do this Awaken Foundation. And I'm like, okay, like, what's Awaken? Like, what is that? And he couldn't really give me like a straight answer, but he was like, it's my legacy, and like, I just care about it. And, you know, he was on all sorts of drugs, so I just kind of had to like make it as I would. And so I spent some time, and I developed some logos, and I just thought about the solution for a while, you know, because it has to be memorable, you know, it has to be important, it has to mean something, because it's his legacy. He wants to leave this behind, if anything. And I developed this concept, and it was this bird flying over a mountain. And I asked him, like, what's the first thing up in the morning? And he was like the birds. I'm like, it's the sunrise, right? And so I had the sunrise coming up over the mountains, going through this valley, and then this bird flying over the whole thing. And it was kind of this journey. And for him, that resonated. And he's like, that's exactly it. And he gave me a huge hug, and we like had a moment, and it was something that was so much more than just a logo, right? It was so much more than just these pixels on a page. Like, it represented exactly what he needed to represent his legacy. And it wasn't about me. It was all about him. This is his. And that created like such a special bond between him and I. And he's such a strong dude, and he's still kicking ass, you know? And I'm super proud of him. I don't really talk to him anymore, but, you know, he's doing so much with it, and I'm super, super proud. And I never would have had this opportunity, you know?
Yeah, you're wearing it right now, man.
Yeah, I mean, he printed this on everything. There's joggers, there's shorts, there's sweatshirts, there's shoes, there's hats, there's backpacks, there's golf bags. Like, he's ambitious, you know, he's an Under Armour rep. Like, he can print on anything, and he knows the people. Not even to mention, one day he just showed up in his Lexus, and it was decked out in a wagon. I mean, like, it was like logo soup on his car. I loved it. And it was for me, like, he was like, you did such a good job or whatever, that he's like, I want to put this everywhere. And he like threw it on his car. It's so awesome. And I love him for it. But I never, ever, ever would have had that opportunity or that special bond with him, you know, unless I was designing.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.